Hello, everyone. I'm Austin Fothery with icdevs.org, and I'm here today to give you a very brief introduction to the work that we've done through our Divinity Grant on our DAOs project. And I'm really excited to share it with you today. We've built a number of things throughout this grant, including our DAOs project website, the ICRC 75 standard and associated tools, the ICRC 104 standard and associated tools, and our first plugin for a new DAO ecosystem called the Rotator. The problem and solution that we were looking at this grant was the fact that DAOs are hard. We tried to raise a lot of money and start a lot of things early in ICDev's organization. It was hard and things didn't quite work. We've seen a number of SNSs launched on the internet computer. Some of it successful, some not so much. We wanted to build some tools and do some research and provide some material that would help those DAOs be more successful. So first of all, what did we study? We did a number of interviews across the ecosystem and really listened to people, what had worked with DAOs, what hadn't worked with DAOs. Specifically, we were focused on grant-giving DAOs and resource allocation and optimization. After we did all of that research, we released our DAOs project website, which provides over 200 DAO patterns and over 50 DAO forms that you can explore. And you can pick these like Lego blocks and see how they might apply to your DAO and if they are things that you might want to look at implementing. We moved on from there to say, okay, what do we need now? Well, we wanted to build something. A number of our forms, and you can go and watch our DAOs project podcast that we've been doing over the last number of weeks and months. We talk about these forms. A number of them at their core had this requirement for the DAO to manage lists of members, lists of approved values, lists of approved accounts. All of these things needed to be managed by a DAO and through DAO governance. The first tool that it made sense to make was a list keeping and management tool. And that's what we built and designed with ICRC 75. We'll show you a demo of that in a minute. Once we had that tool in place, the next logical issue was, how do we automate this? A huge point that we figured out around DAOs is the more you could put into code and take out of management by people, the smoother your DAO runs, the less DAO fatigue your users have, and more autonomous your decentralized autonomous organization is. ICRC 104 is a tool that creates a standard for asking your DAO to take action according to a rule and to affect these ICRC 75 lists. For instance, you don't vote and you're a voting member, replace you with someone who will vote from an eligible list. The next piece we wrote was a plugin that does exactly that. It's called the Rotator. You pass it in canister ID, you pass it in a function, and it will run one of these rules. And it will take people from one list and replace them with people in another list if the rule matches. So I'll run through a quick demo. First, you'll see our DAOs project website. This is at DAOs.icdevs.org. You'll see our table of contents, this incredibly long list of patterns in DAOs. So here we have one called dynamic role allocation. And if you click on that, you can dive in and read all about define role allocation. These patterns are all interconnected. So it's really like a lattice that you can explore. This is a particularly interesting pattern because we want to automate role allocation. These new tools that we've built help us do that. They do automatic role matching, role rebalancing, succession planning. We can automate a lot of that with these new tools that we've built. I'll leave you all to explore that, and we'll go look at some of the tools. The first is our ICRC 75 component, which is a minimal membership standard. This is just a draft proposal. And we've outlined a number of different data types, a number of different functions, which is really just two update functions in this standard. we've set up a number of helper tools here specifically around SNS governance that will help you validate your generic call. So you can easily set up in the SNS for a generic call to have your DAO vote on adding or removing people from different lists based off of their principal. You can also maintain lists of values or list of lists. You could even do a list of accounts, for instance. If you wanted to create a list for an airdrop, you could have people submit proposals to add themselves to the airdrop list and prove that they're a real person or that they've done some kind of work inside of your DAO. If you go to the GitHub, this project has a web folder which has an actual web application. And I'll show that. This is a list manager, and we have deployed a test, and everyone has the ability to create a list on this particular canister. We may wipe them at any time. I'm going to do a quick login with my plug. And you can see I already have two lists. So one is called the Cool Kid list, and the other is called King of the Hill. Cool Kids has a number of people on the list. These are all people from list we had previously called the Builder Too Busy DAO. I imported that list, currently one at a time, and saved it. I also have another list called King of the Hill. There's just one identity here on this list. It's fairly simple to create a new list, but we would prefer that you use some kind of namespace that you actually control. So say you work for foo.com, you can say com.foo.mylist. You can put value-based metadata in here. And I'm just going to click create list. And now I have com.foo.mylist. On this list, I can add permissions. I can give another list. I can give all the cool kids the rights to administer this. So let's do that. org.icdevs.lists. Cool kids. And I'm going to give that list admin permissions. Once this runs, we'll be able to see that anybody on the cool kids list should be able to go and edit. One little tip to know is that if you add the read permission for the anonymous principal, it becomes a public list that anybody can read from it. So if we scroll down to the bottom, we'll see that we have these global lists. And if we look at cool kids, we'll see that the anonymous principal has read access. Metadata is pretty easy. You're basically just adding in an array of JSON-based tuples. I do something like this. And now my King of the Hill has some metadata here, which I could later edit to King of the Hill. There we go. And that's the basic app. You're welcome to go explore this code. There is an example canister as well as the web application. So under canisters, you can see an example. Now, this example canister has no permissions on it as far as an admin goes, so you'll want to add that before you release one into the wild. Next is ICRC 104, which is a very simple standard that basically lets you easily create these rules where we say, I want to use this ICRC 75 canister. I want to target this list and these members and run a specific rule. There's the opportunity in the standard to simulate rules if you want to see what would happen if the rule were applied. And very simple API. This is a class you can add to any Motoko canister. And the ICRC 104 standard is also defined in this GitHub repo. Finally, we have our Roll Rotator plugin, which uses both ICRC 75 and ICRC 104 to create this tool that allows you to say, I want a new roll rotator. Here's my canister. I want to use this ICRC 75 instance, this ICRC 104 instance. This is my qualification function, which you get to define that says whether or not the rule is applied. And you give your rule and namespace, and the list of eligible people that will be rotated in. What your qualify function will do, it will reply with the members that need to be replaced from a particular list. There is a sample called team.mo. And I think it's important to note that this maybe 20, 30 lines of code is all the code I had to write the demo I'm about to show you. That comes in the repo here. I simply create a new role rotator class, and I say that I have a rule called roleRotator.king, and I want to pull from cool kids. So if I go and I look at this qualifier function, should be right here. All I do is I say every 1 minute, I allow this to be called. And I just pass back out the found members. And since there's only one member on King of the Hill, that's always going to get replied. And every 3 minutes, you can replace the King of the Hill with someone from the cool kids list. So I'm going to give you a demo of what all of this can do together. And we're going to take a look at our King canister, which I've deployed here, and we'll see that it has this ICRC 104 apply rules. And I've given permission as an administrator to the anonymous principal, so anybody can go and call this. And we're going to call a very simple function. We can ignore the members, we can ignore any metadata. We need our ICRC 75 canister ID, which is this. We need our rule namespace, which is this. And our target list is King of the Hill. So what is this going to do? If we go back and look at our list here, we see that currently the King of the Hill is this principal MLVDQ. The cool kids has these folks on it. When we call this function, what should happen is that the system is going to call that canister. I believe that this has to do with cross canister calls. It takes a little bit, but when it's done, it's going to see if it's been less than 3 minutes, and we'll say, okay, then we're good to go. And now we are going to replace something. So we ended up with these two transactions, 35 and 36. If we went and looked at our transaction log for our ICRC 75 canister, we'll see that there's an add and remove. And sure enough, if we go back in here and refresh, these are global lists. So now if I look at the King of the Hill, I see that this is now BRADY. I know who that is now King of the Hill. So now this is just the first plugin for what we think will be a huge ecosystem of DAO-based components. And we're building them in a way that they're super easy to plug into your SNS DAO. And they should be compatible with any other type of DAO that emerges. So watch this space, and we hope in our next grant we'll begin to build out this ecosystem with more and more tools that we think will really help automate governance, take some of the DAO fatigue out, and make these decentralized autonomous organizations really powerful. Thanks a lot for your time.